Hey everybody, good morning. Not the muscle doors. This is conflict of interest. So an error has occurred. So I deleted two files. Yeah, we could delete from everybody. So hey, if you're joining me, I am just doing some work on this Saturday that I did not get to do during the week. So if you want to spend some time and work with me and ask me any questions, we can do that. But basically, I am just taking care of some items that I did not get to take care of during the week. Items like reconciling my accounts for the business, checking timesheets, that type of stuff. So that is basically what I am doing. And I welcome you to watch me work, basically, and talk to myself as I'm working. Because I do definitely talk out loud because sometimes I need to process some of the information that I'm going through. So when I am working, I tend to talk to myself. But yeah, I don't usually work on Saturdays. I leave working for the weekdays for the most part. But like I said, I was not able to get certain things done during the week because I was not feeling well. But there are items that do need to be taken care of and needed to be taken care of before Monday. So I'm going to spend an hour or two today getting those things done. So I said, why not let you watch me as I work? Not exactly sure what's. Yeah. Okay, so one of the things that I am doing currently is that I am working on some conflict of interest policies, and just making some updates to those conflict of interest policies so that they are in compliance. And they're in compliance for my client. So that's what I'm working on right now. And then once I'm done with the conflict of interest policies, I will move on to doing my account reconciliations. And then I'll move on to doing timesheets. So if you have any questions, let me know. I do own several businesses. I own a nonprofit consulting firm, I own a staffing agency, and I own an AI agency as well. So, running all three of those together sometimes can be overwhelming, especially if I get sick. And so that's kind of what happened this week. I ended up getting sick. So I have to work for a couple of hours this weekend, even though I really do try to separate working on the weekends. I like to keep it Monday through Friday, but sometimes when you don't get certain things done in your business on Monday through Friday and you are the owner of the business, a Saturdays become a thing, and I need to get it done today because tomorrow I don't want to do anything that is business related. I want to go to the movies and just have a good time. And like I said, I'm not going to take all of today to actually do work, but I am going to work for about an hour or two. And I just said, hey, let me go live. And, people can ask me questions if they want to ask me questions, or just watch me work and talk to myself as I'm working, because that is what's going to happen. I'm going to end up talking to myself because I'm trying to work out whatever it is that I'm doing in my own head as I am doing it. So, again, the first thing that I'm working on currently is some conflict of interest policies for a client who has a nonprofit organization and needs to have their conflict of interest policy updated and compliant with state and federal regulations. And then working through their business overview and mission statement to make sure that it meets the new guidelines, like all of the words and phrases that they no longer want to hear, like underserved communities, minority, women, sex, any of those words. Is a long list of words that you cannot use when you're applying for grants anymore, that those words are not there. And they're really good ways of taking those words out and still having the same effect. I know a lot of people don't think you can, but you absolutely can remove a lot of those. You absolutely can remove a lot of those words and phrases and still have the same effect in your nonprofit organization. You just have to know how to do it. And I can give you an example of what that would look like. So, for instance, a friend of mine's posted on Facebook about nonprofits in their states sending in applications, and the application had minority and women-owned businesses in. That's who the grant was for. A nonprofit organization that dealt with minority and small business owners. But because of the new federal mandates, if you send in an application that has that in it, your application is going to be automatically rejected. You cannot use any of the trigger words when you're applying for your nonprofit for grants, whether they be federal or state grants. You cannot use any of those words anymore in your application. So you have to learn how to go about doing wordplay. That's what I call it. It's just wordplay, right? Not using those words, but still getting the same effect that you need from your application, and talk about the actual community that you serve without using the trigger words that's going to get your application rejected. So if you know that the words minority, women, underserved community, any of the words that deal with the LGBT community are no, right? There's so many of them. Let me go over some of them. Let me find it, and I can go over a few of them with you guys. Trigger words for nonprofit with new administration. Okay. So you can't use words like DEI. We know that, right? You can't use words like DEI. You cannot use words like social justice, equity, systemic, implicit bias, BIPOC, LGBTQ plus, advocacy and activists, marginalized, underserved. You cannot use, those are like the big ones. And there's stuff like women, gender. A lot of those words you cannot use. So for instance, like a word like DEI, you can put in something like inclusive practices, I would not use something like equitable opportunities because the word equity is an inequitable, and they don't want you to use the word equity at all in anything that you're doing. Community engagement is another really good word for replacing DEI as well. So I would use something like community engagement. That's, to me, is the best one to use. Inclusive can kind of get a little red flaggy, so I would say not use it. But to replace the word DEI in anything that you're using, I would use community engagement. Instead of saying something like social justice, I would use something like community means, right? Or promoting well-being. Those are the two ones I would use. Another one that you can use is as addressing disparities, but I would not use addressing disparities because it is too close to some of the words that are on the no list, right? Instead of using equity, I would just use the word opportunity, right? Don't use the word equity. Just use something as simple as opportunity to replace equity. Instead of using a word like systemic, which is one of the no words, right? I would use the root cause. So the root cause of whatever it is blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying systemic oppression, you would say the root cause of the whatever it is that you're saying is this, okay? Or the underlying factors, right? Or the structural issues is another one that you can use. Something like implicit bias is a no. So to replace a word like implicit bias, I would use unconscious attitudes, right? Or preconceived notions. Instead of saying implicit bias, that's a word that's on the no list. So do not use it. If you use it, your applications are going to be automatically rejected. You can still serve the communities that you serve without using the trigger words. If you're looking for funding, if you're truly looking for funding, you cannot use these words. So you have like BIPOC, right? And we all know it's Black, Indigenous, people of color. So you cannot use the word BIPOC when looking for federal funding anymore. So you need to replace that word. Some of the suggestions that they give is like diverse communities. I would not use the word diverse communities because the word diverse is in it, which goes too close to diversity, which is one of the no list. Okay, so I personally, as a grant writer, would replace it with specific populations. So instead of saying BIPOC, I would say specific populations. Again, it's wordplay. You have to get crafty with the words that you're using. Okay, LGBTQ plus community. We can't say that anymore in your grant applications because it will be rejected, right? Any type of funding that you're trying to get from the federal government, you cannot use the word LGBTQ plus in any form. LGBTQIA, none of that. You can't use any of those words. So you could use something like people with diverse backgrounds. That is a really good way to talk about them without actually talking about that group of people, right? People from all walks of life, because one of the things that they want to make sure is that you're not excluding any persons or any group of people. So your words have to be inclusive. So as long as you're using inclusive words, which is ironic, but hey, that's neither here nor there. As long as you're using inclusive words, you're good. Just don't use any words that seem very specific to a group of people, and you'll be staying in the golden zone, per se. So, with LGBTQ community, you can use people from all walks of life or just community members. If you're using something like advocacy and activist, right? Just say community partners. That's a great way to just put it. It's all inclusive. It does not exclude anybody. You can also use collaborators, people you're collaborating with, or you can use the word stakeholders. So community partners, collaborators, or stakeholders is a great way to replace the word advocacy and activists in your funding applications. Again, if you're just joining me, I'm a nonprofit consultant. I've worked with nonprofits for like 25 plus years, helping them to get funding of all sorts throughout the years. I have helped my clients to get over $50 million in funding throughout my tenure in this industry. And it is getting very advantageous for a lot of people to get federal funding right now and to write grants. So as I'm supposed to be doing a work with me, but I decided to just kind of talk about this quickly because I do need to get back to working with me and just getting what I need to get done. But yes, another one is marginalized, which is one that people use a lot in grant applications. It's very widely used amongst the nonprofit community. Marginalized or underserved communities. We always talk about marginalized communities or underserved communities. You cannot use either word anymore. You cannot use the word marginalized and you cannot use the word underserved communities. So you have to change your vocabulary ever so slightly when it comes to this. So to replace the words marginalized or underserved, you can use people in need to replace that. So when you're talking about the underserved community, instead of saying XY organization deals with people in in the underserved communities in Orange County, let's say, right? You'll say people in XYZ organization deals with people in need in the Orange County area, okay? Or you can say vulnerable population instead of saying marginalized population or underserved population. You can use the word vulnerable population. And another one that you can use is communities facing challenges. That's another one that you can definitely use. Communities facing challenges is a good replacement for marginalized communities or underserved communities. So those are just some of the tips. You want to focus on outcomes and impact. That's always going to be important. What are your outcomes? What are what's your impact? Positive results that your organization has achieved, and the needs of your community. You want to focus on those things. You want to focus on your data and evidence. That's where your strong points are going to be. The amount of data you've collected and the evidence that you have to support that data. You want to make sure you're being very specific and being very clear about what it is that you do, who you serve, and how you serve that population. You want to make sure you tailor your language, right? If you're writing grants, you want to make sure now you're tailoring your language to adjust to the new norm, right? And then you want to be positive and solution oriented. Be positive, the focus your positivity on the work that you're doing and the solution that it offers. So what problem does the community have, and how does the work that you're going to be doing solve the problem for that specific community? And again, like I just went through a list of no words and how to replace those no words with other words and other language that still support the mission of your organization and what it is that you do, right? But if you are having issues, you want to make sure that you consult an expert, someone who has had years and years of grant writing, who has won tons of grant writing awards, to make sure that your grant application is what it needs to be before you're submitting it. I'm telling you that if you submit a grant application and it is not up to par, it has any of those trigger words in there, or what I'm saying is no words, right? So if it has any of the trigger words, the words that this administration says that they don't want to hear because they're exclusive and not inclusive, and you don't replace them with more inclusive language, your application is not even going to be considered. So that's something that you want to think about when you're going to be writing, grants. Just a ton of really, just a ton of trigger words. Something like status. The word status is a trigger word. You cannot use the word status. Hey, London, how are you? You can't use the word status on your application. You cannot use the word trauma on your application. Okay, woman. You can't use the word woman on an application. You can't use the word victim on an application. You cannot use words like race or racial on an application, multicultural, polarization. So these are like really common words that you would use all the time. You cannot use the word political or prejudice or privilege or promoting, okay, on your application. You cannot talk about anything about ethnicity on your application. The word equity or equitable cannot be there. Equal opportunity cannot be there. Just like I said, even when you're looking to replace words, make sure that those words, you definitely got to get someone to help you, because ain't no exactly. There's just so many words that you cannot use. You got to be very careful about making sure that you're not using any word that can possibly become a trigger. And I think what they're going to do a lot, or some agencies have already started doing, is running your applications through an AI program for all of these trigger words or anything that's similar. So if you don't know how to replace these words, it's going to cause you a lot of issues. You are going to be throwing away resources because you're going to be writing an application that nobody's going to look at, right? So making sure that you understand what the words are and making sure that you're not looking. Oh, you can't use backgrounds. Okay, the word backgrounds together, you can't use that word, right? You can't use the word disability. Okay, that's a no-no word. At this point, all I can say is give me some money. For real. you can community diversity is a word you can't use. Community equity is another word. Cultural differences, cultural heritage, cultural responsive. You cannot use the word groups. You cannot use the word groups. GROUPS. You cannot use that word. It is a trigger word, and your application get the opportunity to have someone read your application because you cannot use that word. Okay. What else? Gender. You can't use that word. You can't use the word female either. Remember I said you can't use the word woman? You cannot use the word female either in an application. Okay. Fostering, you can't foster anything. Okay. So you cannot use that word. Oh, and you can't use the word increase. So you can't increase anything. So you got to find a replacement for that word as well. And you cannot use the word historical, because nothing is historical, because we know they're trying to erase history at this point in time. So you cannot use the word historical. So those are just some of the words that you can no longer use on your grant or any type of funding application, whether it's service contracts or federal funding. Even if it's pass-through funding, you cannot use these words to apply for grants. So make sure that you're taking your time filling out these grant applications. I know a lot of people are trying to run through to ChatGPT or Claude or Perplexity to get their applications done, and they feel like they don't need grant writers anymore because they have these large language models. They are not a replacement for someone who has years and years of expertise. Yes, they're good, but you still need to have a grant writer on your team, especially right now, someone with a second pair of eyes. Even if you're not paying them to write the grant, you should at least pay them to look over your grant before you submit your grant for funding. So that's just some of the stuff going on in the nonprofit industry currently. I mean, there are tons more, but you have to do your due diligence. You have to make sure that you are keeping up with what's happening a lot of funding has been taken away. A lot of organizations that you think you were getting money from, where do you think they were getting the money from? They were getting the money from the federal government. And now that the federal government has reduced or completely eliminated a lot of those funding sources, they don't have the money to get to you. So you're going to have to figure out how your nonprofit is going to survive this shift, right? How are you going to continue to serve the population that you have determined needs your help without the federal funding? There definitely are many, many ways. I teach on this all the time. I've been screaming this at the through the roof for years, that your nonprofit cannot solely rely on grants to survive. And right now, it's truly coming down to that. If you are going to survive this shift, you have to rely on more than grants. So a lot of people think that nonprofits can only give things away for free, right? That's your only option. You're a nonprofit organization, so everybody that comes through your door gets something for free. And that's not true. Nonprofits are businesses. At the core basis of a nonprofit is a business. And what are businesses in business for? They're in business to make money. So your nonprofit can make money as well. You have to figure out how not to cross the line into UBIT while making money, because you can't make money just like a regular for-profit business, because there's certain things that you cannot do. But as long as you don't enter UBIT, which is unrelated business income tax, and I teach on that all the time as well, you are fine for making money. You can earn income. You can sell products and services as a nonprofit and generate income for your organization to then turn around and help the community. But again, you have to make sure that you're doing it strategically so that you don't fall into an IRS loophole that will get your organization status taken away from you. Okay, but nonprofits are business. I have 32 different ways that nonprofits can generate income for their organization and continue to serve their community and pay themselves, because we know that a lot of nonprofit founders are not paying themselves. As a matter of fact, you're stealing from Peter to pay Paul, right? You're using your own income, your savings, your retirement accounts. You're just running through money, trying to help other people. Maybe as your redemption to get into heaven, I don't know, but you're making yourself broke, trying to help other people out while not helping yourself. Just like any other business, if you started you would expect to be paid from that for-profit business, right? You're going to sell a product or service, and in return, you're going to make a profit, and that profit will come to you. As a nonprofit leader, you should expect to be paid as well, right? If you didn't expect to be paid, then why would you start a nonprofit? Because there are fees associated to it. You would just go ahead and volunteer somewhere. But the fact that you decided that you wanted to start this nonprofit organization means that you probably wanted to get a salary out of it. If you don't want to get a salary out of it, then you should not have started it. So making sure that you're helping people and still helping yourself. Says, if you're somebody, because a lot of people like to tell me, God led me down this path, right? So if you're somebody who feels like you were led by God to start this nonprofit organization, then he also said he helps those who help themselves, right? So you need to run your nonprofit in a way that it's going to be profitable. Now, you cannot pocket the profit. Okay, you can't do that in a nonprofit organization. You can do that in a for-profit organization. In a nonprofit organization, you're going to pay yourself a salary and that's it. But at least you're getting a salary that you can live off of. You can live a good life off of. And then the surplus, the extra profit, is reinvested into the nonprofit organization. But you should not be poor or on the verge of being poor because you run a nonprofit organization. If that's your life, we need to talk, because that should not be your life. You should never be on the verge of poverty running a nonprofit organization. And that's because there's this misnomer being spread all around that in order to run a nonprofit organization, you are going to immediately get grants. Like, you get your determination letter from the IRS and immediately you're going to be grant ready. And that is not true. I wish people would stop spreading that rumor. Does it happen for some people? Absolutely. Everything has someone who has broken the mold. But for the most part, for the 97% of people that start nonprofit organizations, that is not the fact. That is not how it happens for them. Okay? When you start off your nonprofit, when grantors are looking at your nonprofit, they are looking at what it is you have done. You have to have numbers. Did you beta test your programs and services? Do you have an account, right? Because a lot of you are not taking the time to get your data together. Can you tell me how many people you've served? What is the demographic of those people? How many men, how many women, what age group they're in? What was the outcome? Did they meet the expected outcomes? If they didn't meet those expected outcomes, what other follow-up services do you have to get them to meet those expected outcomes? Do you have partners and collaborators in your organization to help people with the services that you don't provide? Because you can't be everything to everybody. You cannot provide everything that someone who comes through your door is going to need. That's just not what is going to happen. So you need to have wraparound services. That means you need to be partnered with other for-profit or nonprofit organizations to make sure that the people that you serve are getting a full scope of service. So I always like to give the example of when I worked for a GED program. One of the hindrances that we found in the GED program is that people who came in for the program were mostly women, because it's a second chance program. I mean, you went through high school, you dropped out at some point in time. Now you're older, you're like, oh my God, I need a high school diploma. Let me get back to school, right? And a lot of the women, especially, were not coming to the program on a regular basis. And if anybody's here has been through a GED program, you know it's no joke. You better off going to high school, okay? So they would not come because they did not have funds. That's what they kept telling us. They didn't have the funds to buy a bus pass or to pay for a bus to come to class all the time. So this was an issue, because whenever you put a program together, you have to look at the gaps within your program, right? So this was an issue for us. So we reached out to the Department of Human Services and we were like, hey, do you have a program that you can help to give us bus passes for people who are coming to the GED program? They said yes. We applied for it, we got it. So that took care of that aspect. Now you can't say you can't come because you cannot afford to take the bus to come to class. Okay. The next thing that we had an issue with was a lot of the girls saying, a lot of the women saying that they could not come because they had no one to take care of their kid. Right. So, okay, babysitting is an issue. How can we take care of that? Reach back out to the Department of Human Services and we're like, hey, do you have some child care programs that we can get our students into so that does not become a problem anymore? They said yes, we applied for it, we got the funds, now we can give them child care vouchers. So we took care of all of the excuses. If you're not coming after that, that's a you problem. After they finished the program, they were able to go. We had a job or career counselor who would help them to determine what path they needed to take next after they finished the program, pass a test, right? Whether they were going to go into the path of a vocational service, they were going to go to community college, or they were just going to go out and get a job. And we had other partners who could help them with those things. So I'm just saying, as a nonprofit organization, you cannot provide all of the services that your clients need. You have to develop collaborations and partnerships to make sure that you're giving them a well-rounded program and service opportunity. So that is my spiel. This is not what I came on here for. I literally just came on to just sit here and do my work and let you guys watch me work and then talk to you intermittently, but this became a whole thing. If you have any questions, let me know. You can always hit me up or go to my website. Links are in the bio. If you need help with your nonprofit organization, if you want to make sure that you survive this particular shift that we're going through, because it's not going to be business as usual. You're not going to have as much access to funding. As you know, all of the funding, I went through a lot of the words that become trigger words. So a lot of the funding that was designated for certain pools of people are not going to be designated anymore. You are going to have to literally fight and scrape and scrabble for funding moving forward. It's just not going to be business as usual. And you have to have a different mindset and a different strategy if you are going to survive the funding shift for nonprofit or social enterprises moving forward. You cannot just sit back and think you're going to get a grant or people are going to donate. We're going through a recession. People are going to have financial issues themselves. So they're not going to have a lot of disposable cash to donate. But can you survive? Can you still help your community? Absolutely. And again, if you really want to understand how you can do that, contact me. Go to my bio. There's a lot of information, free and paid information that you can take advantage of. I teach on this all the time. I worked with nonprofit organizations for over 25 years, about 27 at this point. I have helped them to get over $50 million in funding, and just the grants, and probably another $4 million in multiple streams of income, which is funds that does not take grants. It does not take donations. You can work your nonprofit. It's a business, right? Again, there's a fine line between working it like a for-profit businesses and working it compliantly as a nonprofit. Because if you cross over that line, you cross into UBIT and you will be fined by the IRS and you will get your designation taken away and you will have to pay taxes. So knowledge is power. If you have questions, let me know. I haven't seen any other questions in here, but let me know. Hit me up in the bio section and we can talk from there. So, all right, guys, have a great rest of your Saturday.